And breaking tonight, more troubling news in our own hemisphere. Two Russian jets touching down in Venezuela this weekend, reportedly carrying dozens of Russian troops, along with a Russian defense official. National Security Advisor John Bolton tonight slamming Russia in a tweet saying, quote, "The United States sends food and medicine to help the people of Venezuela rather than sending nuclear-capable bombers and special forces to prop up a corrupt dictator. Russia should work with the international community to support the Venezuelan people." Here with me now is former U.S. Army Special Forces and Center for Security Policy Executive Vice President Jim Hansen. Good to see you, Jim. So how far do you think Russia is willing to go to protect Maduro?
By sending these troops, they have made a significant provocation and raised the stakes significantly. I mean, at this point, the U.S. has already recognized Juan Guaido as the rightful leader of Venezuela. So Russia coming in now and going against the will, as was mentioned, of 60 countries that support Guaido is a bad thing. And we should keep in mind, this is not the only place that U.S. and Russian troops could potentially be on the ground together. In Syria, they are.
Right.
And there was a group of 200 Russian mercenaries that decided to try and take a U.S. base out in Syria.
It didn't work out too well.
No, they got returned to their component molecules. So I think Putin should keep that in mind.
Well, again, the question is how far we might go in supporting those people who are fighting for freedom in Venezuela. But I'm just wondering, particularly after what happened in Syria, where the Russians saw that we were serious about protecting our interests, whether they're in Syria or Venezuela or any place else. Do you think Russian troops would really be willing to give their lives to support this clown, Maduro?
I think it is a provocation designed to create a response, and I think the question is nobody wants a military confrontation here. And the amount of troops that the Russians sent is not enough to even make a dent. We probably have more people hiding in the jungle there than they brought in on those planes. But the bottom line is there could be a situation where we feel obligated to protect people, you know, like Guaido's chief of staff and other people who are being kidnapped and picked up. There is no way the U.S. can countenance this, having decided that Guaido is the rightful ruler. So I think there's an upcoming confrontation that hopefully won't go to military action.
Well, and the one thing that I find very hopeful is that there are a lot of desertions now, not at the top. I mean, there are only a handful of people at the top who've left the Maduro regime in the military, but I'm told that 1,000 troops have deserted, going to Colombia because they just can't afford to live anymore in Venezuela, and they have the freedom to travel that normal civilians don't have. So if you just have a bunch of overpaid thieving officers in the Maduro regime without troops to govern, what kind of defense does Maduro really have?
Yeah, that's one nice thing about corruptocrats and the thieves that you talked about is they're not going to pick up a gun and fight. They're going to go ahead and they're probably exfiltrating all the money and other valuables if they haven't already, and looking for their plan to find a place to sip Mai Tais on the beach. Those guys are not going to fight to the last man. We'll see how many Maduro gathers around him, and I have a feeling he'll be pushed out by an international pressure of some sort.
Now, Jim, in the 1980s, we helped rebels in Nicaragua, and they eventually displaced the Sandinistas, who were threatening the entire hemisphere. And I know that there were special forces guys in Central America at the time. You suggested that there are special forces guys now in the region as well. What will they do? Are they training rebels? What exactly are they doing?
I think there's a good chance that we're making sure that both in Colombia and Brazil, where we do have cooperative agreements, that those militaries are prepared if anything has to be done. There are probably some discussions underway with those troops who have gone ahead and already left Maduro's service to say, why don't you consider, becoming a force for good? That's a special forces mission that would be perfect in this situation.
Yeah. Jim Hansen, great to see you, Jim. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it.